Hello and welcome back to my Factorio videos. So a couple of videos ago I showed my first ever 016 map, and I wanted to play a game that was mainly made of rails and water. I rolled the dice for starting a few times, and on that first playthrough the map was appalling. There was no iron basically where I started. So rather than persevering through with a situation which could never go anywhere, I ditched that game and started a new map. So this is the railworld settings with maximum size starter and the water dialed up all the way for size, and I think the second lowest frequency. That seemed to give me a collection of islands and headlands without the entire map dissolving into blobs of unconnected land. So I had to roll the dice several times to get a good starting setup. It looks like when the water is generated, it obliterates the land which is there, which means that resources get lost. It kind of feels like that's the way it's being done. The result of that is that the maps with high water just don't give you very good starting setups. So this was about the 8th or 9th world I went through. Anyway, this one seemed to work. There was a bit of iron, which I'm mining, and that patch is mostly mined out now. And enough to run 2 smelting columns initially. There was a patch of copper, which I have barely touched. And there was a little coal patch. It was about twice this size initially. I've been pruning it back as the miners mine out. So there was a bit of coal to run smelters. See, I've got 2 columns of iron, 1 of copper. One of the irons is split and run through to make some steel. And then this is bricks, although I've stopped making bricks because my very first patch of stone ran out. So there's plenty of room here to add in extra arrays if I want to, as and when. The starter site here was initially just this central area, about what's in view now. And as I expanded out, I found there was a lot of attacks coming from this area, which at the time I couldn't really see where it was going. But that turned out to be a little headland. So when I'd killed the biters there, they were gone. And there was a nice patch of coal here, 1.6 million. So that is now being fed into my boilers to keep the power on. So I've got a full array going. I'm using, I'm using a fraction of that. That's pretty good. So I like to keep my power usage down to 1/4. Anything above that, and if you get spikes in use, things can brown out, and if the thing that browns out is the stuff that's making your power, then it kind of all goes wrong quite quickly. So this plateau had a big patch of oil, but it's only a 5,000 patch. So I had to put down something like 30 oil wells to get my 5,000, which is kind of sad, really. So this whole area now is full of pump jacks, and then that gets fed into a stack of refineries, and of course at the moment I don't have blue science yet, so the refineries are doing the inefficient refining. I'm making lube because I'll need that for my electric engines for my blue research, and I'm making some plastic because in a minute I'm going to need red circuits. That's really what I'm going to move on to in this. Right, then I had just enough room to do something a bit like a main bus in this map. Let's drop out of map mode. Right, and jump in my car. Sorry, my car is always damaged because I'm always bumping into trees. So let's drive over here. Right, so my main bus is pretty minimal at the moment. I'm just running some copper and iron. I've got just a tiny bit of green circuits being made. That's all we're doing for green circuits. And then this is my making useful things area. I'm intending to move to bot-based production at the earliest opportunity. So this is really just to make the things I absolutely need to get life started. So I start off by making a cubic ton of gears. I found this setup works quite well. So making either 2x3 or 3x3 array of gear makers, dumping them on a belt. Then you shove this belt along. And so I've got the yellow belts and red belts being made. I'm not intending to even touch blue belts because, as I say, by the time I'm doing high volume production, I'm hoping everything's going to be bot based. Then I go straight into my inserters. So I've got a single maker of the baseline inserters here. That makes the long arms and the fasts. Then I'm running the green circuits sort of parallel, cutting across here to feed them in. Right, so we carry on feeding through here, make our stack inserters and filtering stack inserters. I never use filter inserters. I know lots of people who never use filtering stack inserters. I end up never using filter inserters, or at least not in significant numbers. So rather than having yet another machine here, I didn't bother. Then we make our tier 2 fabs. Pipes, because everybody needs pipes. And what I do here is I've split one of the gears lines to also be a pipeline, because there's several things which are built using pipes and gears. So we've got oil wells and the chemical plants. Then I'm making various things to do with rails here, so the trains themselves and their carriages. For that I need engines, and it works out convenient to run 2 engines onto a belt because there's several things that need them, and when you need them you need a lot of them. And then there's a bunch of items here which consume both steel and circuits. So I've got a split steel circuit line that comes through. So we make our pumps, which we need for all sensible refinery work, fuel wagons, and of course, to make fuel wagons you need to have tanks. So make the tanks. The various sundry items you need for trains, signals, etc., etc. Then we're in a situation where there's a bunch of items which are made using green circuits and copper cable. So the simplest thing here is to make a split row of circuits and copper cable, feed that down. There are items up here which just need... so then there's also a whole load of items we make which need gears and plates. So I take one of the other gear line and merge it with plates. So that kind of works quite nicely. So we make our electric mining drills, pulling from the steels and plates. Then we've got all our various switches and combinators and lights. And that all comes off here. So they all feed from one or both of plates, cables and circuits. And that's pretty much it here. So that's my make. It's not a make everything area. It's a making useful things I actually need area. The only other thing is poles, and they're not made in the main fab area. They were sort of a panic construction here. Then red and green science, military, and of course the obligatory grabbing things I need from military. And here I hand fabricated 2 filtering inserters. Okay, so the next science I'm going to be doing is the where is it? Right, is the science pack, and that needs some engine units, electric mining drills, and red circuits. I need red circuits, right? But there's nowhere in here that's obvious for making them. And anyway, when you're making red circuits, they just consume every single green circuit you have lying around. They hoover up green circuits. So what I thought I would do this time is make a dedicated red circuit making area. which doesn't reuse the main bus green circuits. That way later on, it should be easier to shift things around and maybe move things into outposts. The other thing is, almost immediately that I had trains, I needed trains because this starter area had so little resource. So I've got a train here which just ferries coal, and if we look on the map, it's a really wiggly woggly route. It has to get through this little pinch point, and then it's into a plateau area, and then it picks up coal from here. So then the other train goes up north, and it's going up to a second iron ore area. So it's not a very big iron ore, 0.29 currently, right? But it's enough to keep those two smelting stacks going. Now, if we go up, there's a really nice patch of iron here. It's showing 5.8, but it hasn't been completely uncovered on the map. So that's the next one I'm going for, but I can't go for that right now because it's just infested with biters. This whole area is. And I don't have the firepower. So I need higher tier military research to get the turrets to work well enough. I need a lot more ammunition. I tried riding in here with the car stacked up with red ammo, but the biters just obliterated my car. So really need a tank, or I need laser turrets. Anyway, that will be my next target. This area here may be something else with choke points that I can grab off. So none of that's going to happen until I have red science. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today. So let's come out of this and fully exit. Okay, so there's a really neat website which you've probably used before, the Factorio Planner. You probably can't see this because I've got a high-res monitor, but the URL is duma.com, and I'll put that in the video description. So what you can do is fill out in this area the items you would like made, and you put in a number which is how many you want to make a second, and then it tells you how many machines you need to make it. And there's checkboxes which you can put on and off as to whether it's going to be made separately or if it's going to be glommed in with some other product you're making. So for example, if I checked this for green circuits, I would get a separate green circuit making plan in each place where green circuits were needed. If it was unchecked, it would do that each place it was needed. If it was checked, then it would pull that out as a top level item to make once and then share. Okay, so I've set the red circuits to 3 a second, and I was really just trying different numbers to come up with a ratio that makes sense. So at 3 red circuits a second, I need 24 blue fabricators. That's where I'm at in the game. I would need 4 green circuits. I would need 6 fabs to make the copper cable for the green circuits. That would also give me consuming 6 plastic, and then that would need 12 copper cables from 4 machines to feed into the red circuit makers, because the red circuits consume copper cable, plastic, and green circuit. Now, for every 1 green circuit that's made, it consumes 1 iron plate. So if I'm making everything in one area, I'm feeding in an equal volume of iron plate and plastic and twice that of copper plate. And immediately I'm thinking 1 full belt of copper plate and a split belt of plastic plus green. So this is 24 red circuit machines, 4 greens, 6 copper cable plus 4 copper cable. And there's a multiple of 2 sitting in there that we can take out. So let's go from 3 a second to 1.5 a second. Okay, so now our numbers look like 12 red circuit machines, 2 green circuit machines, and we need 2 copper cables to feed the reds. and we need 3 copper cables to feed the greens. That's looking more like our 2-3 green circuit making unit that everybody uses everywhere. So this looks like something to base a design around, and that's what I've done. So I had to roll back to Factorio 0.15 because creative mode doesn't work yet in 0.16. But this is what I've got so far. So the intuition here is that we have a 2 green circuit, 3 copper cable, which is then driving 6. Which is then driving 6 red circuit fabs from one of the green circuits and 6 from the other. So the 12 in total from 2. We need our extra 2 copper cables there and there. And those are the copper cables for the red circuits. So I tried all different ways of doing this, and this seems like a fairly compact, tileable way to do it. So we feed in a full line of copper down this side. That full line of copper is consumed by 5 copper cabling machines. 3 of those direct feed into our green circuit machines. 2 are feeding onto underground belts. Our red circuit machine is pulling an iron plate off this split lane of iron and plastic, and then feeding the green circuits that it's made onto this same split belt. So we end up with a split belt of green and copper cables. So then our machines can eat from the green circuits and copper cables and from the plastics, and that's everything it needs. Then it needs an output, and that's where I ran into trouble the first few times, because I ended up a few times running an extra belt outside this, which was the red circuit output, but that was kind of ugly, and it introduced an extra row, and it really stopped things tiling nicely. So what I've done this time is what I never ever intend to do, which is the belt braiding. So the red belt is running from left to right, carrying our circuits and copper cables. There's also a right to left yellow belt, and this is the one which the red machines are outputting onto. So we output here and here into the yellow underground, and it works out that if you put the inserters in just the right places, you can weave these. So each of these machines is outputting onto the yellow, and it's exactly the same setup below. So the machines are outputting into the yellow undergrounds, and they're pulling from this mixed belt of cables and circuits. So once we get to the end of the row, the reds are merged with this splitter onto the output line, and with the 0.16 changes with compression, this should at least guarantee that the outgoing red is fully compressed. So that's our tileable, reusable module. So that consumes, when you stack it up far enough, that will consume exactly 1 full belt of copper, while consuming exactly 1 half belt of plastic and half of iron. We don't need any external source of green circuits, and we can run this off, 1 copper and a half of an iron smelter, or 2 and 1 later on. I think this, when it fully consumes the entire line of iron and copper, I think that works out at just over 2.4, I think, of the chemical plants. So pretty good. I've got 10 chemical plants. At some point, obviously, I will consume all of that, but this is the unit I'm going to be using in my watery rail world to start making red circuits so that I can move on with the science. Well, thank you for listening. If any of you has a friend who knows a friend who can encourage the creative mod to be ported to 0.16, I would be very thankful. Other than that, have a great evening and good luck in your 0.16 Factorio worlds. Hello and welcome back. So this was going to be just the one episode today. I went back into Sandbox and checked that things actually worked when you stacked up my design end against end, and discovered that it didn't. So this is the unit I had before. We've got the copper coming in on the left. We've got a split line of plastic and iron on the right. And it's running nicely as a single unit. Occasionally this end machine is going red, and then as we start to zoom out and look at the whole stack, this end machine, this corner machine, keeps not quite running. And we're obviously not consuming the entire plates and plastic, although we should be. And something's not quite right here. So when I had a look at how this was running over time, I was seeing some orange lights going on, and the orange lights mean that something has been made and can't be got rid of. And I was seeing some red lights as well, and trying to figure out what was going on. And it turned out to be an issue with the copper cable being loaded. So this copper cable is being loaded with a long red inserter, and the long red inserters are slow. You can see this is going at full speed. So that's the problem. We can't actually load enough copper cable quickly enough, consistently. That one just flashed orange, and that's what the bottleneck was. So I had to think about how I could fix this, and my first attempt was to swap the lanes around so that the copper was where it was. Then we're now bringing in the iron and plastic in from the left, and the red circuit's going out at the right. This is actually going to be more easy to deal with in the real world, because it keeps your outputs and your inputs separated, which is always an easier thing to deal with. But this partly solved the problem. But then the problem was that there was a red circuit machine here which was browning out, because this green circuit, do you see it's flashing amber? The reason it's flashing amber is because it can't quite get rid of all of its materials. Now, the reason why is initially it was being output with a single red inserter, and that wasn't able to spit it out as quickly as it was being made. So I put in a second red inserter to try and fix that, and that certainly helped. But I was still having problems with the machines just not running as quickly as you would hope. So you can see here the copper's making it up to about this level, whereas here the copper is going all the way up. So, you know, we want the copper to be consumed as quickly as possible, because that means all these copper cable machines are running flat out. So this is certainly an improvement, because the copper is gone by here or so. But I still wasn't happy with this. There's just not very nice things happening with this run here with the braided belts. Thinking about it, the reason was that the braiding here, in relation to the green circuit, is close to the green circuit. So we are inputting iron plates, to the green fab with a red, which is sort of all right. We're outputting with a blue, which is all right. Here, we're outputting distantly onto the far belt, and it's just tricky to get the timings right here. So I shuffled it around again, and now what we have is the belt swapped over so that the belt is always being emptied onto from the green circuits by a fast inserter, by a blue inserter. Okay, so that seems to have fixed the problem with the green circuits. They're now running flat out, and to feed them I needed two long-handed inserters to feed them. So here we are, there's two for the one on the bottom and two for the one on the top. However, once I had done that, the only way to route the plastic and copper belt for this upper half was to scoot over the top and down, because we needed to bring in our copper cables with an underground, and we have to go around a corner to bring it down a line. Okay, so the fix for that was to use a second longhand inserter here to feed this red machine. If we take this away, then over time this machine blinks red because it isn't able to quite get enough plastic. It's kind of bizarre that there would be this issue, but that's just the way it is. So the only way to feed in the plastic here is with a long arm inserter. There's nowhere to put a short one to pull in because it's pulling in the circuits and copper here and it's outputting red there. So there's this extra long arm inserter here to feed this one machine. Anyway, that's the design I've come up with, and this appears to work quite well. So if the copper is running out about halfway up this stack, here it's making it above halfway. So I think if we could cut off this here, 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 and I think that is our reusable array. And that keeps all the lights green, all the machines are running flat out. We're close to consuming a full copper, and we are consuming a fair amount of plastic and iron plate. So that's where I'm up to. I'll probably do some more fiddling with this later, but I think this is the design I'm going to be putting in to my railworld. Thanks very much for watching part 2. Hopefully there won't be a part 3.